Welcome back, guys, to a brand new edition of the Sports Rundown Radio. Again, joining alongside us is Caynan Bird, Ben Lejeune, and Tyler Lejeune. We'll go ahead and start off this episode talking about the NFL. Big news coming out of the Giants organization. Eli Manning lost his starting job to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones comes in and gets his first career game win versus the Bucs, also gets the first win of the season, making the Giants 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, we see the young guy, Daniel Jones, the 6th overall pick out of Duke, getting his first career start at New York. Wasn't necessarily a pretty win, but he showed that he has the talent to get the job done as the starting QB in New York to replace Eli Manning. We saw him go 23 for 36 with 336 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, it was a pretty good showing for the young guy.
Yeah, and he's going to have to perform big now that Saquon Barkley is out with a high ankle sprain. He's going to be missing 4 to 8 weeks. You saw Saquon kind of being the power horse of the Giants organization. Well, now that he's out, and Eli Manning hasn't been performing at a high level in a very long time, I think Daniel Jones is now his time to prosper and get some big time play time for the Giants. So how do y'all see the future of the Giants organization?
Well, first off, at the running back position, Wayne Gallman is going to resume all the carries for the Giants while Barkley is gone. A couple videos came out of Barkley being unsure of his injuries. He was seen walking off the field with trainers, was not able to put any pressure on that ankle. Later comes back to the field in crutches, wearing a boot. He's expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks, but let's go back to his college days at Penn State. As a freshman, he suffered a high ankle sprain, and he missed 2 games with that injury. So that 4 to 8 week time frame, we see a lot of running backs have this injury. Sometimes it lingers long. Sometimes it's an injury that they can get over with fairly quickly. So he does say that he's trying to get back on the field as soon as possible. We wish him a speedy recovery, and we'll see if he can make it back to the field soon.
All right, on to the next story. Antonio Brown back into the headlines. I think this will be his last headline for a while. He got cut by the Patriots amid another sexual assault allegation. Then after that, he tweets about the NFL saying he is done with the NFL. I saw a couple of stories coming out. He was yelling at Robert Kraft, his teammates. He was calling out different people. It just doesn't look good for him all around with the sexual assault allegations. There's a few things, that owners can say, okay, this is the bottom line. You kind of see this with Colin Kaepernick, They say, okay, this is the bottom line. We're going to lose a lot of money. But the bottom line is you cannot, you saw this with Oakland and even with the Patriots, even with the Steelers, with the Steelers, he was calling out Mike Tomlin, Juju Smith-Schuster, Ben Roethlisberger. With the Raiders, he was arguing with Mike Mayock, the general manager. And then with the Patriots, he's sitting there arguing with Robert Kraft, the owner. So I think Antonio Brown's future in the NFL, I can see him coming back because he has great talent, but it's not anytime soon. Don't get me wrong. It's no time soon.
Well, you can see with his temper flaring up with both front office management and both coaching staff, players, and anybody else involved in the organization, it's going to be very difficult for him to attract any attention from any other organizations because these other teams don't want that type of negativity within their team, in their locker rooms, in their front office. So despite him having so much good talent, I feel like it's going to be hard for him to find another home in the NFL.
I mean, you got a receiver, an athlete that just brings a lot to the table when it comes to NFL games. And each and every game he comes up and shows out just with his God-given talent. But, I mean, a team's captain and NFL vet, I mean, it's just like he can't stay out of trouble, and it's just like NFL doesn't have a place for him anymore. So, I mean, he can't carry himself like that and expect to be a superstar like that.
You know, being that this is the second team that Antonio Brown's been with this year, it seems that the same situations keep coming out. You know, as far as him playing in the NFL this year, you know, there is teams that have interest. But as of right now, I think the best thing to do is for him to have this situation play out. Apparently, he's back in school, enrolled, taking classes. But from moving forward, I just think that the dust needs to settle, and he can go from there.
Alrighty, so after that, we'll transition into the top fantasy performers this week. Starting in at the quarterback position, we have Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. This week, he had 406 yards, 2 touchdowns, 51 rush yards, and 2 touchdowns on the run. Big time performance against the Saints, even though they did not get the win. Saints ended up winning that game. Big time performance from Russell Wilson. So on to the running back position, Mark Ingram had 103 yards on the ground with 3 touchdowns. Also had 4 receptions for 32 yards. That he was the top fantasy performer at the running back position. Then we'll go into the wide receiver position. Mike Evans for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 8 receptions for 190 yards with 3 touchdowns. So that is the top fantasy performers for week 3. Now on to the NBA. Isaiah Thomas out for 6 to 8 weeks with thumb surgery. Isaiah Thomas couldn't really find a home the last few years after leaving the Celtics organization. He's now with the Wizards. We hope him the best with a speedy recovery and see how he's going to do in the future in the NBA. Moving on to the next story, Rockets and Thabo Sefolosha reach a 1-year deal. Sefolosha played with the Thunder when James Harden and Russell Westbrook were there, so they kind of had that team chemistry. Looking forward to seeing what the Rockets can do this season with Sefolosha, Westbrook, Harden, and Eric Gordon on that team. Moving on to the NCAA. Terrence Marshall will be out for at least 4 weeks following foot surgery. Big time LSU wide receiver. He leads the SEC, I believe, with 6 touchdowns receiving. Big time playmaker for LSU, going to be out. But again, next man up. We've seen this so far. You have Rashad Lawrence out. You have Glenn Logan out. A lot of other guys are out for LSU, but again, it's next man up, and they're 3-0 in the season, making record numbers for their offense. So let's see what they can do for the rest of the season.
It's obviously a big loss, but like you said, it's next man up. And the good thing about LSU and their wide receiver position is that they have a lot of depth. We saw when Marshall left the game in the second half, Racy McMath took over him, made a couple good plays. I believe he had 4 catches for 75 yards. But on top of that, even still, you got guys like Steven Sullivan. And also, aside from Jamar Chase, you have Justin Jefferson, who also left that game with an ankle sprain. But I think the receivers will be all right. It's the next man up. We've got a really powerful offense. We've got a lot of great guys on that receiving core. You can't forget about the injury on the defensive side. Linebacker Michael Divinity suffered a leg injury with like 4 minutes in the first half. A big scare for LSU right now is the defense. Vanderbilt put up a decent amount of points on them. But then again, you have to look at the injuries. We're not 100%. I believe it'll get a little bit better once this new offense is kind of hampering our defensive ability, being that we stay on the field all the time. But once those guys get healthy, I think that they'll be all right. And Orgeron commented on Divinity's injury. They'll have to get some tests done on him to see exactly what it is that actually happened to him.
Yeah, but going back to the wide receiver core, you also see a deep tight end position where used to, with LSU, they were just purely blocking tight ends. But, you have Thaddeus Moss at the tight end position that he's a big-time he brings in big-time receptions. And you kind of saw him with the Georgia Southern game as well as, the Vanderbilt game. Just a lot of big-time guys stepping up for the wide receiving core for LSU. But going on to the next story, number 3 Georgia beats number 7 Notre Dame 23-17. Number 3 Georgia, Jake Fromm, leads the team to a victory over a big-time top 10 opponent, and they ended up getting the victory 23-17. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Chandler said, it was a back-to-back game the whole game. Every drive, every ball, every down had counted in the game. And, Georgia's kicker coming in, knocking all those field goals, definitely got it in as, if you would have missed 3 of them, it would have been a tie game. So with his clutch field goals, not messing up, making any rookie mistakes, made it really interesting to watch, especially with both quarterbacks putting on a show and both teams putting on a show. And it's kind of like the first podcast we talked about the Bears and the Packers. Chandler was saying that, would you rather watch a defensive game like this or watch straight offense? And so it was kind of, both defense and offense on both teams were showing out and just doing their jobs and made it a really good game. And number 3, Georgia pulled it off.
Yeah, well, talking about a back-to-back offensive game, UCLA beats Washington State 67-63. That almost sounds like a high school basketball game right there. But no, it was an NCAA football game. Washington State's quarterback, Gordon, threw for 9 touchdowns and still couldn't get the win over UCLA.
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, Washington State's quarterback, Anthony Gordon, passed for 570 yards and 9 touchdowns, and he still couldn't get the win. But the thing is, it wasn't necessarily back and forth all game. Late in the third quarter, UCLA had a 49-17 lead. So, Washington State had a 49-17 lead. So UCLA came back from 32 points down, rallied behind 6 turnovers by the Washington State Cougars, and was able to eke out that 4-point win by a final score of 67-63.
So I believe that will do it for the NCAA. Now moving on to the MLB.
Moving on to the MLB, we're going to talk about both the American League and the National League MVP races. So we'll start off with the National League. Cody Bellinger is currently leading the MVP race. Following him will be Christian. Being injured still holds that number 2 spot. And following him is Rendon. But we see a clear winner here. It's going to more than likely be Cody Bellinger that's going to run away with this thing. They're both going to have, or he's going to have about 50 home runs by the end of the season. Rendon just has a way higher batting average than Bellinger, so that could be one possible good thing towards voting for him for the NL MVP. And we're going to move on to the AL MVP. Top three there are going to be Mike Trout, Alex Bregman, and Xander Bogaerts. And we've seen Trout already win the MVP twice. He's also come in second place in the voting twice. So I'm pretty sure, despite missing those last 2 weeks, he can still probably snag this third MVP for him. But Alex Bregman is making a good case for himself down there in Houston. He's got close to 40 home runs and has been a huge threat offensively for the Astros. And Xander Bogaerts is just kind of tiptoeing his way in there. Could be a dark horse sleeper win for the AL MVP.
So I believe that'll do it for the Sports Rundown Radio. I believe this is episode number 4. Make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment down if you watched all the way through. If you've watched all the way through, I'm going to get y'all to comment TSR for the Sports Rundown. Just testing y'all to see how if y'all have watched all the way through. But I believe that'll do it for Ben, for Caynan, for Tyler. This is the Sports Rundown Radio.